our preferences, we have to be able to sacrifice, but our needs, we never can. So you have to decide, like, do I, maybe I've never put on my list or whatever, or thought about needing someone who's patient, but I realize that in my past relationships, I've been with people who were extremely impatient with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused me a lot of stress and a lot of pain. So what I actually need, even though I may wish that I didn't need this, or I may have in the past lied to myself about needing this or denied that I ever needed this to myself, this is what I need. And so even if they have everything that's good on paper, if they're impatient, that's going to be a real problem for me.
Welcome my guest, Jillian Turecki. She is a certified relationship coach, teacher, and writer who has for 20 years taught others how to transform their relationships with themselves. Under the trilogy of Tony Robbins and world-renowned family therapist Cloe Madanes, Jillian is certified by the Robbins Madanes Center for Strategic Intervention, a renowned coaching program known for its innovative strategic solutions to the most difficult relationship problems. Fueled by an insatiable curiosity about what makes a relationship thrive, Jillian has helped thousands through her teachings and writing revolutionize their relationship with themselves so they could transform their relationship with others. Jillian is sought out for her compassionate, direct, and very authentic style of coaching and teaching. All right, I have the honor on bringing on Jillian Turecki. This is just, I'm just so happy because I've been diving so deep into your content, as I was mentioning offline, and I just resonate with so much you're sharing. There's so much value and truth, and really just, you have just extensive knowledge when it comes to relationships. So I've been just stalking all your content and just absorbing as much as I personally can, and also in prep for this interview. So I'm just happy to have you on. Thank you for being on the show, Jillian.
Oh, well, thank you so much for stalking my content. I love it. And
Yes.
I'm grateful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's just jump right in. Let's talk about the foundation of all relationships. And that really stems from the relationship we have with ourselves. And I know personally from my own journey, this was like the constant lesson that I know that I was being hit with is like, you're seeking so much outside of yourself to be loved, to be worthy, and all these things. But really what it really had to stem from is cultivating that within myself. So I would love to just dive into that real quick. What is your opinion on this? And what are people missing when it comes to, because so many of us seek and want love, but yet they're not really turning the mirror on themselves. And are they cultivating it within themselves first?
Yeah, so it's a lot. So, a lot of people want love, but they're looking for it in places that are not actually yielding the results that they want, right? They're choosing people who can't love them, who don't love them. So, or they are consistently finding themselves in relationships that maybe start off well, but quickly end up becoming painful in some way, whether it's totally unhealthy or just it just doesn't work out, but just painful. And so that's when we have to stop and say, okay, what inside of me needs to change? What are some of the patterns that I need to break? And one of those patterns could be, well, I keep choosing people who are really wrong for me or don't really treat me that well. And so therefore, what needs to change is I need to like fill a void inside of me, or I keep choosing people who treat me fine, but I'm constantly wanting to fix them or change them. I'm not accepting them for who they really are. Well, then something that has to change is that part of you that feels like you have to turn a partner into a project. Or maybe what has to change is the relationship is fine, but you have to stop doing certain things in the relationship. You have to show up differently in the relationship, so you're not constantly trying to change someone, or maybe you have to date someone else. So every relationship that we're in, good, bad, mediocre, whatever it is a mirror, and it'll always reflect back to us where our work is. Whether, and that could be really deep inner work of learning to quote unquote love yourself and honor yourself and respect yourself, or it could just be the work of, I need to stop doing that thing that I've always done because it's not working. Or, I have to start, listening better or communicating better. So it all roads lead back to something that we can do to change. And that shouldn't be discouraging. It really should be encouraging, because if we can make a change, like, we're actually that powerful.
Yeah.
We could change something, and it could be, sometimes the shift is really the shift is very necessary and critical, but it could just be a little shift to the right or to the left, and it can make a huge difference in our love lives. And I think that it's important for people to understand that we are really that powerful, but we first have to look within.
Absolutely. I remember like the whole idea of taking personal responsibility for your life is so empowering, because when you're in that mindset, when you're like, okay, it is my responsibility. So now what could I do to change this? Now you're empowered, opposed to being a victim of things are not working out for you and whatnot. So I completely agree. And that's a really good point. And I think once you get that self-awareness, like, you know what? I'm part of this equation. So what is my part, which we all are 100% responsible for how we show up in a relationship. So we have to turn the mirror on ourselves. It's so important. And I think that I wanted to start with that, because I do believe that is the foundation of building any healthy relationship. We have to constantly reflect and say, what's my responsibility in this, and take ownership for that, and be kind to yourself, not like putting blame. It's sometimes hard to not play the victim and say, like, I failed, but self-awareness and having the ability to take responsibility, you're taking ownership for your life, and that's empowering. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely, couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So talking about, a lot of people think about like what they want in a partnership. Like, let's move into, okay, I've reflected on myself, and I know my wounds, and I'm addressing them, and it's a healing journey for life, right? It's not like overnight we're going to change these patterns that we've formed from childhood and whatnot. But once we start to look for a partner, a lot of people ask ourselves, what do we want? But we never really ask the question, what do we need? And I think that's a really different way to look at things, because I think that will give you such different clarity than just what you want. So what would you say is like the questions we should ask ourselves to get clarity on really what we need in a relationship?
Well, first, to ask the question, what do I need? And then, like you said, like, how do you get clarity about what it is that you need? Well, I would suggest that one reflects on their past relationships and the things that really worked and the things that didn't really work. What did you get in the past, or what did you experience in the past with past partners that you would like that to have that moving forward? You would like that there to be a continuum of that. The other thing would be, what happened in the past that was just not good, and you're like, that was because we have to look at our past relationships and learn, right? And really and heed the lessons. Okay, so that went down, that was terrible for me, that was actually really not good for me, that was a bad match for me, that was not good. So I think that you first do is you look at your past relationships, and you see, and you look to your past relationships in order to give you the information that you need about what it is that you need. I think that you also have to look at just, understanding your psychology. So let's take this just where you want to live, right? Because this is just sort of a low hanging fruit. If you're someone who's like, I need to live near nature,
Mm-hmm.
and I need that. I don't just want to live by near nature. I need to live near nature. Well, guess what? You'll need a partner who wants and needs that too.
Right.
It's not going to work with someone who's like, no, I need to be in the fast-paced city. Like that's fundamentally not going, that's so even though they may have everything that you may want, like if you need kids, like, you want kids, you need kids, these are the things that are really important. So that's how you start to figure out, not just, so wants and needs can be very similar, but let's not confuse them with preferences. You may
Mm-hmm.
have a preference for a person to look a certain way. You may have a preference that they, I don't know, do whatever it is. But our preferences, we have to be able to sacrifice. But our needs, we never can. So you have to decide, like, do I, maybe I've never put on my list or whatever, or thought about needing someone who's patient. But I realize that in my past relationships, I've been with people who were extremely impatient with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused me a lot of stress and a lot of pain. So what I actually need, even though I may wish that I didn't need this, or I may have in the past lied to myself about needing this or denied that I ever needed this to myself. This is what I need. And so even if they have everything that's good on paper, if they're impatient, that's going to be a real problem for me. So those are the first steps to take.
Yeah, and as you're speaking about this, I've done this little reflection lately as well, because I'm in a 4.5 year relationship, and I realized, and this is one thing that I learned from my past relationship as well, that I need, and I'm sure a lot of people relate to this, is the feeling of being safe. Like I want to feel safe in my relationship, and anytime I don't feel safe, I get into fight or flight, and I feel the need to create the safety within myself. And so,
Mm-hmm.
speaking for a lot of, because I know this is a common thing that women experience, they've either had abandonment or they don't feel safe in a relationship, and maybe it's not because their partner at all,
Well,
right?
that's the really important thing to really point out,
Yes.
because
So,
someone can't actually make us feel safe all the time.
mhm. So
Sorry, you were going
no, so speaking of that, because I completely agree with that. That's so true. So how do we create safety for ourselves, and how could our partner as well hold us in the space to make us feel, if you want to say, safer?
Yeah. Well, there's two sides to this conversation. One is I always say, we need lots of things in a relationship, but foundationally you need safety. If you don't, like, that is like the baseline. If you don't feel safe with emotionally and physically and mentally with the person who you're in a relationship with, it is not a relationship that's going to last. Just period. And if it does last, it's going to be a nightmare. So we need to feel safe in a relationship. It's the single most important criteria for a relationship is safety. It's not the only thing that you need, but without that, none of the rest matters, because it's the safety that creates the foundation. Then, but because nothing is so binary, there's another piece of this, which is that there are some people who feel so insecure and their self-esteem is so low that they're constantly feeling unsafe, even with a really safe, quote unquote, safe
Right.
person. So that's when, because we all are tasked with with having to we have to be able to meet our needs for stability and security. So we have to have a certain level of security within ourselves, meaning we never want to be in a relationship at this stage. I mean, in the past, people would get married to build a family. The traditional model was, I get married, I depend on this person for my financial stability. and I stay at home and take care of the babies. This is something that is not as common today as it was back then. And I say, you want to have a certain amount of stability financially before you just decide you're going to just depend on someone else, because you never know if that relationship's going to
Right.
last. You have to be able to feel secure enough in who you are that you're not every single day needing reassurance. That's on you, right? That being said, don't stop choosing people where you don't feel safe to be yourself. Stop choosing people where you feel like you have to change yourself in order to be loved by them. Stop choosing people who you feel like your nervous system is a wreck around. Stop choosing abusers. I'm not saying all the people like that are abusers, but there are people who are attracted to abusers. Stop
Absolutely.
choosing, stop, that's, you probably have to go to therapy and do deeper work for that. But so you have to choose people who are safe. So the way that we are safe to people is they're allowed to express an opinion that doesn't necessarily align with your opinion. They are allowed to be themselves. Now, that doesn't mean, make no mistake about it, when you're in a bad mood, when I'm in a bad mood, that's not who you are.
Right.
So it's like, yes, we need to be able to feel safe enough to once in a while be in a bad mood, and we know that we're still loved. Our responsibility, though, because we're never, ever, ever going to be stripped of our responsibility in a relationship. And our responsibility in a relationship is to say, oh, whatever, I'm not feeling great today. I'm just kind of in a crappy mood. Just so you know, it's got nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
That goes a really long way. So, but I digress. So we want to make it safe for someone to openly express themselves, to be who they are, to have an opinion, and to feel like you can have an argument, you can engage in conflict, and the person is not just like, bolting for the door every time there's a problem. That's an unsafe person.
Right. Right.
So I hope that answered your question at least
I
somewhat.
think that is really useful. And I think for a lot of people, because you touched on two really key points, because there's one side and then there's the other side. And I think both,
Yes.
whoever's listening to this is going to either connect with one of those, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a trigger and something that they get to reflect on, which is really great.
Yeah. Okay,
So
good.
I definitely want to talk about first the dating stage, and then people that are in long-term relationships, and possibly those that are wanting to end a long-term relationship or a relationship.
Sure.
So touching on first the dating aspect. So I know, of course, we talk about values all the time, and everybody's heard like, know your values, know your values. But when it comes to early on dating, do you think that conversation should come early on, or how could somebody start to get to know somebody's values and to see if they're really in alignment? The potential to have,
Early on.
yes.
Very much early on. Like, this is what I like. So what are you looking for in a partner? Like, what are you looking for in a partnership? What kind of partnership do you want? Like, what do you want to do together? Like, what kind of things do you want? Do you want kids? Do you not want kids? Yeah. I mean, a first date, there should be, building of see if you have rapport, make some connection, ask each other about each other. Don't interview the person. But yeah, you can say, like, what are you looking for? I think that's a really important question. What are you looking for? What kind of partnership do you want? Oh, yeah. Do you want kids? Like, oh, okay. How important is that to you?
Yeah.
But it's not like sit down. Okay, now
Yeah.
please list all your values. It's like, let's see. Like, do we get along? Okay, what's most important to you in life? Like, what's most, instead of saying, can you tell me what your values are and let's see if we're aligned, which is like totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that on a date. Just say, what's most important to you in life? Or you can say, or you can share even better, family is really, like, this is just an example. Family is really important to me. I'm really close with my family. I see my parents like every weekend. We have this family dinner on Fridays, right? So when you're sharing that with someone, and if they're actually listening, they're learning so much about you. Oh, like that is like, I'm learning about what's important to them. I'm learning about what they do on Friday nights. I'm learning that, already I'm learning that if I'm going to pursue a relationship with this person, that's what we're doing on Friday. Like you're learning so much. So sharing stuff like that. And I think it should be right off the bat
That's great.
about
Yeah.
sharing what's important to you.
Yeah. And you get to know, like you said, a lot about somebody when they share what they love, what they spend their time doing, what they talk about, that
Absolutely.
you instantly know their values by that.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows, like when you're in the honeymoon phase, everything is just, butterflies, rainbows, and stars, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes when you're in that stage, you'll neglect those things that are really valuable to you. For example, let's say uh, a woman that's older and they want to have kids, and they know the guy is kind of, yes, he's open to it, but maybe not ready yet. And when they're in this honeymoon phase, they will sometimes let it slide, having those deeper conversations because they don't want to rock the boat, and they won't really put in those non-negotiables. They'll just like dismiss it because everything's great. What would you say to that? Because I know
Stop.
I've heard.
I would say stop doing that. I would say stop doing that. Yeah. I mean, we can do that in our 20s or
Yes.
early 20s or whatever. Like we can do that when we're young. And that's part of like the fun. That's part of the beauty of youth, right? Is being able to do those things and not think about the future really so
Yes.
much. But you don't want, if you want a relationship and you really want children, like, um, you have to just stop that. You have to get very serious about not indulging and getting attached to people who don't want what you want in life. And I wish there was like a deeper thing that I can say, but you have to go slower. If you get really attached when you sleep with someone, don't sleep with them until you know you're on the same page. Be really upfront about what it is that you want, and and again, just go slow. This is where chemistry really screws us over,
Yeah.
because we'll get so caught up in that. But again, and this is not in any way a judgment. I have done this, so this is not a judgment, but I'm just keeping it real, which is we have to be more mature. Getting caught up in the honeymoon phase is okay when you're a teenager and a very young adult. After a certain age, I mean, I want you to enjoy it, but you also have to be practical. And that's just part of being mature. You have to just say, no, I'm not going to indulge in something. I'm not going to sweep this under the rug. I'm not going to be afraid to rock the boat. I'm not going to do this anymore. And you don't.
Yeah. I know it's so hard, right? We've all done it, but I do think
Yeah.
like it is really practical. Like if you really value yourself and you value your future and you
And your
trust
heart.
yourself and your heart.
And your heart. You have to protect your heart. And you're going to get very hurt if you get into these situations with people where you're not honoring what it is that you absolutely need and want.
Absolutely. And I know part of your story, I remember you've shared this, that you were in a marriage that 90% of it was good, but 10% wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes when people are in a relationship and they're like, all these things are good, but this kind of bothers me. And I think it's cultivating that self-trust, that 10% matters so much, that you need to take the stand and
Well,
be brave, right? Having the courage.
yeah, let me rephrase it a little bit. So
Mhm.
it wasn't the marriage that was 90% good and 10% not good. It was my relationship before I got married to him.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't that, because I don't want it to confuse listeners, because that 10%, sometimes you should ignore that 10% because you're not going to get the perfect partner.
Mm-hmm.
So if, figure out what you can tolerate in a partner as well, not just what you need. But the fact of the matter is that before I got married to him, that 10% was very, very, very important. It wasn't just little things that would have been smart for me to just to not pay attention to because no one is perfect. It was huge. And when we got married, that 10% became the 90%. And all the good that was 90% actually became the 10%. So marriage actually takes that 10% and makes it into and multiplies it. Marriage doesn't fix things. Marriage magnifies the things that are wrong to begin with. Sorry, I didn't mean to, but I wanted to.
Oh, yes. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah. And also because, we do have to, no one is perfect, but if that 10% or that small amount is really big, like you feel it in your bones, it's really weighing on you, something doesn't feel right, you can't ignore it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving into a longer relationship or somebody that's been committed for some time, we've talked about the honeymoon stage. So very often we get comfortable in a relationship. We all do, because you get to know the person and then you just become more casual per se in how you show up. It's not like trying to bring your best self all the time.
Yeah.
And so how do you recommend to keep the passion alive, to keep, if you want to say, a honeymoon phase going in a different way, if you want to say?
Yeah, sure. So oftentimes when things get a little stale in that department in a long-term relationship, the first thing that I tell people or that I encourage people to ask themselves is, how has the magic gone out in me? How do I feel stale? Am I doing things that make me feel joyful, that make me feel inspired and make me feel alive? Am I taking care of myself in a way where I feel sexy? What is my relationship with my sensual, erotic, sexual self? Because we are most attracted to someone when they're in their element. And that element could be anything. It could be something with their work. It could be when they're with a child. It could be a moment where they're just like, when you get into these states where you're just like at one and at peace with something that you're doing. And it has nothing to do with the person you're in a relationship with. When we witness someone we're in a relationship with in that state, that is when we are most drawn to them. That's when we're most attracted to them. So the question is, are we getting into those states enough? Again, bringing this back to the relationship that you have with yourself. That's number one, and it's number one for a reason. And then number two is, everything that's depicted in television and film and art when it comes to relationship is the falling in love stage. And we don't have any real examples of enduring love.
Yeah.
And that's because it's not, the falling in love stage is just, when we witness it on a screen, we tend to, through osmosis, get those chemicals built inside of us. So it feels it's very addictive, and it makes for good TV. But enduring love is a practice. It's not a feeling. Falling in love is all about emotions and feelings. Staying in love is about the practice. And so it may not be that sexy, but if you're in a long-term partnership, let's say you have kids, you need to schedule the date nights. You may need to schedule sex if you have a really busy calendar and you're parenting your children. But you got to do it. You really have to do it. And you have to start bringing more of your A game to the relationship. because people get really complacent. They get complacent in their own lives. They let stress get the best of them. And they think, I was just recently interviewed and I used this analogy, like a relationship is not a cactus. You can get a cactus and you don't have to like water it ever. It just like stays alive. A relationship is more like this person was saying, like a bonsai tree that you have to trim constantly. Right? So it's the plant that is much more beautiful than a cactus, that when you give it love, it just blossoms. But it's the plant that when you go on vacation, like you need someone to come over and water it. You need to make sure that it's like by the window or not by the window. There's a whole thing, there's a whole rhythm that plant needs to succumb to or be part of in order to blossom. That's a relationship. And keeping that alive is important. You don't just leave bread on the counter. It goes stale.
Yeah.
So you have to do things to keep yourself and your mind and your psychology and your life fresh. If your relationship is boring you have to see the ways in which you're being boring in the relationship. And that's really how it goes. And schedule it.
Yeah. Yeah. So great. So great. Okay. I know you talk a lot about the chokeholds on relationships, and I know
Yes.
I definitely want to reiterate it on this episode because it's important, because I really want to share with everybody, like, for people to be aware of what is hurting their relationship and how to manage it, how to correct these chokeholds, right? The three I think you mentioned. What do we do with these? So if you could share those, that would be great.
Yes, I mean there's so much. So I think the chokeholds that I outlined in my podcast was stress was one of them. Do you remember the three chokeholds? I mean, what were the other ones? Oh, so stress, taking for granted, I believe.
Selfishness.
And selfishness. Yes, selfishness. Yes. So stress, selfishness, and I believe, and taking each other for granted, which is basically
getting
kind of like a laziness that starts to happen. What's that?
Yeah, and being comfortable. Yes.
And yes. So it's like, okay, so we'll start with that, which is it's the habit of becoming too comfortable. And that is like, again, I bring my A game to everyone out in the world, but I bring my C game to my partner. It's being so comfortable that you don't think that once in a while, like putting on that shirt or that dress or that underwear or that scent that you did in the first month of dating, like bring that back. They love you in that shirt. They love it when you wear that perfume or that cologne. They love it when you wear that underwear. Like, why is it in the back of your drawer? Why aren't you wearing it for your partner? So that, and just the comfort level of, oh, they love me. They'll never leave me. Mm-hmm. That's not true. Everyone has a threshold, even those who will be treated badly. Everyone has a threshold. So never treat your partner as though they would never leave you. Stress. Stress is a part of life, but how we react to the daily demands of our lives. And I'm not talking about the big stress of when someone dies. I'm talking about just the everyday stuff. And what happens is we get so stressed out, we get in our heads, we stop communicating, we stop doing the things that make us feel alive. We let ourselves get stale, we let ourselves get bored, we feel stuck, and then we don't get any help for it. We're not taking measures to deal with the stress. And then, like I said, relationships really, truly, rarely end because of a lack of love. They end because of a lack of connection. And it's the lack of connection can really come when two people are stressed out all the time.
Mhm.
Or the lack of connection can come when you think, oh, I don't have to tell them that they're beautiful or amazing today. I don't have to praise them today. They know how I feel about them. No, you have to praise your partner a lot. That's what really great relationships, great couples do. They're always reminding each other how wonderful they are and how appreciated they are and how cherished they are. And then selfishness. Again, I was speaking about this in another interview, but it was, even for those of us who are very generous, truly generous natures, I think that when it comes to being in a romantic relationship, one thing that we always have to confront within ourselves is our own narcissism, our own self preoccupation. And part of stress, for example, will make us, when we're really stressed out, we're very preoccupied with ourselves. When we feel insecure in any way in a relationship, we get very preoccupied. What about my needs? What about my needs? Are they being met? Are they meeting my standard? Are they doing this? If you're in a relationship with someone, and this has nothing to do with mistreatment or abuse. If you're being mistreated in any way, that's a whole different ballgame. You got to get out. And I have, that's for sure. But let's say you love this person, then their needs have to be as important to you as yours, because a relationship is never going to work if one person feels like their needs aren't being met. So it behooves everyone involved that everyone is getting their core needs met, right? We have to meet our needs too. It's not like, oh, they have to meet every single need of mine. That's a ridiculous expectation, but just the core needs. So, we can get selfish in a relationship. We can get fearful. And then we can make it all about ourselves and self-protection. And it's very easy to finger point.
Yeah.
And so those are the three chokeholds of a relationship. Thank you for jogging my memory, but I even though I speak about them all the time, it's almost like brain fog with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those three I've said it so many times I don't even remember. But yeah, those are the three chokeholds. Yeah. By far. Sorry.
And stress is probably the hardest one because, like you said, everybody has stresses going on in their life. And so, and so often when we're stressed, we are operating in our head and we're creating stories and we're in fear mode and all these things. So we're reacting from that space. And as what Tony Robbins says, if you're in your head, you're dead, especially when it comes to a relationship. And so what would you recommend for somebody that's dealing with, job stress, family stress, raising a teenager, whatever it may be? How could the two partners come together and help each other during that stressful time in the best manner possible? Obviously, communication's one, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it, which is that, stress is the hardest one because life can be very stressful and can be very hard and can be very overwhelming. So this is by no means a slap on the wrist for people. I mean, some people it is a slap on the wrist because it's like you're really stressing over things that are really not that important. But there are things that would be stressful for anyone. So exercise and meditation, I think, are non-negotiable for stress management and for dealing with stress. And actually, so those are non-negotiable. And then having some sort of mentorship, whether it's a teacher or a therapist or a coach, whether it's a teacher that you have who's an author who you've never met, but you read passages from every day. This has to be every day. People don't want to do it. They say they want to reduce stress, but we want immediate gratification, but it's the rituals that we do every single day that matter. And so moving your body, I don't care how you move your body, but moving your body, meditation, and you can literally just do it for free on YouTube. Find a meditation of a guide. Start with a guided meditation based on a guide's voice that calms you. Do that minimally 10 minutes every single morning. Ideally, you do 20 minutes twice a day, but if you can just do the morning, 10 minutes minimum, your mind is going to feel like it's on like some sort of upper in the beginning. So don't go into meditation with the expectation that you're just going to be zen. It's a process. It's a process and you have to stick with it. But exercise, well, I think there's a lot of immediate gratification from exercise. When you exercise afterwards, you feel totally different.
Absolutely.
Don't you agree? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So there's that. And then never underestimate the power of just saying to your partner, I've been in my head a lot and I don't want to be in my head. Can we talk? And then, and never estimate the power of also saying to your partner, you seem like you're in your head a lot. Do you want to talk?
Mm. Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to at least get the conversation going kindly. And I think that's one thing that I was going to ask you as well is how do you give kind feedback? Like if somebody is maybe being aggressive or just their communication with you is just short or whatever it may be, and just the dynamic is just not at its best, it's reactionary. How would you kindly give feedback? What would you recommend, opposed to just like blaming the other person?
Right. Well, feedback is not just reserved for that. It's just sort of feedback of like, I noticed that when this happens, you do this in your life, so the feedback doesn't necessarily have to do anything with you. It's just sort of like, I notice that you're sort of like a little bit off your path, or I notice a pattern in you. Feedback should always start with saying something nice and complimentary. That's the art of giving feedback. Mm. You say something, and it has to be genuine. You have to say, I love the way you do this, or I appreciate how much you're trying, or like, I can't tell you how important you are to me. Do you mind if I just give you like, I've made an observation about something. Do you mind if I share that with you?
So easier to receive it that way. So beautifully
yes,
said.
It's a lot. Yeah. You want to say it in such a way that you're not, because, we're animals first and foremost. So if we feel an attack coming, we're going to self-protect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about resentment because this is a hard one. I know when it gets to the stage of resentment, it's not a good stage to be in, but do you believe you could work, like a couple could work out of that? And when should they bring in a third party to help that, if they should? Because resentment's a hard one and it's usually built over so much time. Bless you.
Thank you. Resentment is really hard. It's really hard. And I always say, like, do anything to prevent resentment from taking over. That means you have to communicate and say the things that you are not saying, and ask for what you need. As so that you don't get, resentment is like being the story land. Things are bad when it's crossed over to contempt, where you are so resentful that you feel hateful. You feel hateful. That usually is a relationship that's not going to make it. I'm like on a mission to help people, and to help myself do this as well, to, as soon as you start to feel the resentment build up, Number one, don't immediately make it their responsibility. If the resentment is building up, and this is where I really like Byron Katie's work, is where you can say to yourself, wait, is that true? Is that thought that I'm having about them really true? Or am I projecting a whole bunch of nonsense onto them? So that's the first step. The second step is if you're saying to yourself, well, actually, it's something that they keep doing that's really bothering me. And I've been trying to hint at it, but I haven't directly said it. So then it's time to assert yourself in the relationship. And a lot of women in particular don't know how to assert themselves in relationships. We haven't been taught. And then the third step is, once you've kind of gone through all that, is to let it go. Not to hold on to grudges. To see, okay, can I let this go? Can I let this go a little bit? Like, am I getting resentful over things like the toilet, like them not putting the toilet seat down, or them not, or them not, appreciating, like whatever it is, like little things. Am I getting resentful over things and completely missing the fact that, like, I'm with an incredible partner who, like, does some little things that kind of annoy me, but that's the thing that I'm going to be like, okay about, because look at all the rest of that I'm getting. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the 3-step process when it comes to resentment.
It's so great. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't think of that. Like, am I resentful at them, or is it something that I'm holding from something else? Like, we never question that, I'm sure. So that's a great one. And when do you think you should bring a third party into the relationship to help therapy or coach? Which one do you think is better? Because you're a relationship coach. Are you a psychologist too? Are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. No, so I would be curious, in your opinion, when to go to a relationship coach, when to go to therapy, and maybe it's by preference. I'm not sure, but.
So I don't think I think it's just about finding the person that's good, because there's a lot of people who aren't good. So it's about finding the person who's good and who can help you and you resonate with, and who's going to be very honest with you. The old therapy model is you don't take sides, but the newer model is you absolutely do take sides, and you do point out when someone is actually behaving terribly. So you just find someone who's good and honest and and you resonate with. I think if more people went to some sort of couples counseling preemptively before there's a problem, I think that's very good. I think it's very, I mean, I'm Jewish and not even religious, but I know in certain religions, I think in certain people who are very involved in their Catholic or Christian communities, they see, a counselor or a priest before they get married to go over certain things. I really like that. I think that, if you're transitioning from relationship to now like more serious partnership or marriage, to go see someone to make sure that you're on the same page, that you can transition your life well with that, I think it's really important. So I think don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until you're rolling your eyes at someone, because then it's usually too late.
100%. I completely agree. What would you say if you were to define, if you want to say, a perfect relationship? What would that be or look like? Because we talked about, what was that?
There is no perfect relationship.
Yeah, there's definitely no perfect relationship. But if you were to define what it looks and feels like, what is the container of a good, healthy relationship?
Two people who are, and we're talking about a committed monogamous relationship between two people, right? Yes. Okay. So if we're looking at that framework, Two people who are dedicated and committed to doing the work necessary to make their relationship thrive. So that means they take care of their own emotional and physical mental well-being. They are committed to getting through obstacles together. They're committed to doing the work. They're committed to engaging in conflict with one goal in mind, harmony. They are kind and respectful to one another. And they trust each other implicitly. No one is afraid. No one is hiding something on their phone or their emails. They have nothing to hide. That doesn't mean that certain things aren't private in their minds and stuff like that, but they have nothing to hide. So complete trust, commitment to one another and to themselves, to doing the work, and kindness and respect.
So great.
Because
So
even
great.
the couples who I've worked with who are going through a really hard time, or people I've spoken to going through a really hard time, and even if it got really gnarly sometimes, there was always commitment, kindness, and respect, and they still fundamentally trusted each other. And, look, betrayals happen in a relationship, and I've seen people get over the hump of betrayal. But they did that because they got third-party help, and there was a ton of accountability, a ton of taking responsibility, and from both sides, and a commitment to move forward. So accountability, kindness, respect, trust.
And the commitment to move
The
forward.
commitment, yeah, you have to be, meaning like, I'm committed to you. I'm committed to making this work. I'm going to grow. I'm going to make the changes that need to happen. I'm in this to win this.
Absolutely.
Not to, of course. And then, sometimes you have to know when to call it quits, but this is generally what goes into a relationship.
I think it's so great, everything you just shared. And I think that's something that people should personally reflect on if they're in a relationship. Are you being that? Are you in alignment with everything that you just said? That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And just the last question is in regards to if that is not the case. And I've heard you share this before, and I think this is really great. Some people ask, like, when does somebody know to end the relationship? And you've shared before that there are 4 questions that you should ask yourself. Can you share that? Because I think this is really powerful, because I think some people just run before
Yeah.
they.
Yeah. Yes. They either stay too long or they bolt too quickly,
Yes.
So, and so, some of this is, I've added to some of this. So one is, do you know their needs, and are you meeting their needs? Because we tend to, when we're considering ending a relationship, we tend to only focus on ourselves. So are you actually, because if you're thinking about ending a relationship, you probably have a long list of all the ways in which they're not the partner that you want or need. But have you reflected on if you've been the kind of partner that they need? Have you reflected on have you been the kind of partner who you actually want to be in a relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know your needs, and have you been asking for them to be met? Have you been communicating? This is something that I've also add, which is, so that's really the accountability and the needs part. Do you still both want the same things in life? Do you still, because growing apart is a real thing.
Yep.
It's not a failure. It's a part of life sometimes. So do you still really want the same things out of life? Or has that changed? So do I know their needs? And have I been meeting them? Do I know my needs? And have I been asking for them to be met? And then the fifth one is, do we still want the same things out of life?
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap this all with a bow,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question I ask all my guests. And then, of course, I want to mention all the things you have an offering for all the listeners. But the question is, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned along in your journey that you just feel everybody needs to hear right now, it doesn't have to apply to even this topic, just a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you feel just we all need to hear.
Yeah, it's funny. This is not the one that I thought that I would answer with, but it's the one that I always like to answer. It's the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah.
When it comes to healing, whatever it is, because we're all having to heal something, right? When it comes to that journey of healing, the needle mover for me has been having a mentor. And even if you can't afford a mentor, again, it could be a mentor in a book. It could be a mentor and a podcaster, it could be anything. So that's the beautiful thing about technology and everything today. Find yourself a teacher and a mentor who has accomplished or has done, who can guide you from a place of feeling like a victim to then becoming the hero or the heroine of your life. Because we need help. We can't do it alone. So find that person or find that group, find those people, whether it's someone you hire or someone that you are, consuming for free. Find it. Because that is what's going to help you heal.
I love that. And actually, speaking of that, resources, your resources, I want to mention your podcast. I've been listening to a lot of it, and there's so much goodness. So Jillian on Love, I want to make sure everybody here listening to go follow and find Jillian on Love on all the platforms, of course. And then you also have something called Conscious Women, and it's a membership community. So if you could talk a little bit about that,
the Conscious Woman is just it's a membership for women. It has like pretty much most of all my workshops, and it's got dozens and dozens and dozens of resources and materials in there. It's self-led. But I also do live monthly workshops and book clubs with my members, and I'm very actively engaged in the Facebook group. So it's sort of like my movement that I really wanted to create for women who really want to be accountable for their love lives and accountable for their lives in general, and to become the heroine of their lives. And so that's it. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to plug everything in the show notes. Of course, everybody could find you under Jillian Turecki. Of course, I know a lot of people will not know how to spell that. So in the show notes, just click on it and head you right over.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Jillian, thank you so much. We covered so much, but there's so much more. So I want people to really dive deep into your content and all the value you share. And just thank you, because I know relationships are so challenging, and you bring a lot of truth to the hard stuff. And it's better to have the truth in front of us and knowing what to do with that. So thank you for your guidance and helping so many people, most importantly, find the love or cultivate the love within themselves so they could have a healthy relationship outside themselves. So thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.